Alright guys, so I'm going to do a quick overview video on a bunch of FPV parts that I've been collecting over the last few months, and you know, a few notes here on just FPV parts in general. Lately, manufacturers, they've been constantly sort of switching out components and making new versions, and you know, some of the stuff I have here I've only gotten maybe a month or two ago, and they either discontinued it already, or there's a newer version out. So I'll explain some of that here as they go along. Also, for some of these parts, if you happen to buy one of these, I highly recommend going to that product link page or the manufacturer's support page and downloading the wiring diagrams, specification sheets, etc., and then saving that somewhere on your hard drive with the other documentation. Make sure that you have that in the future, so you know if you need to do a rebuild or something, you'll have that documentation, because I get those kind of questions all the time. And of course, I don't get every single part that's out there. There's way too many, and there's too many different versions, and they change over time. And so pretty much most of the time, I would say like 80% of the time, I would have to say, sorry, I never got that part. I don't know where that documentation is. You'll have to contact the manufacturer, and in a lot of the cases, the manufacturers aren't saving that documentation either. So yeah, and this is on some of these parts, you know, that I've been, well, it's not anything that's on this table here, but on some of the things I've seen from people. They've only purchased something maybe 2-3 months ago, and it's been discontinued, and all documentation has been removed from the support site for that manufacturer, and so you're pretty much out of luck. So if you happen to buy any FPV parts these days, highly recommend that you find those PDF documents and save them, so that you'll have that for reference in the future, because who knows, a couple months from now, those parts might no longer be available, and you'll have to, you're just basically out of luck if you didn't do that. So important tip, especially now for 2023, things are constantly changing. Parts come to the market, they're out for a few months, and either a new version comes out or they discontinue it, something happens. That is pretty common now, so very important to know. Anyway, got a bunch of flight controllers, all-in-one flight controllers, got some ESCs, motors, got some GPS modules here. So without further ado, let me just quickly give you sort of an overview of these and what is going on with them as of June 2023. If you're watching this in the far future, you know, some of these videos sit around for a while, and then someone watches them 3 years later. Probably everything in this video is going to be pretty irrelevant 2 or 3 years in the future. So if you haven't been watching that and asking me questions, often the answer will be, I don't know, because it's way too old if you're watching this 3 years in the future. Anyway, let's get into the video. Alright, we'll start off this HobbyWing 65 amp 4-in-1 ESC, and this is a 30 by 30. So this one does happen to have some documentation here. This has two versions, 65 amp and a 45 amp version, and the one I have is a 65 amp version. And just a quick look at a little bit of documentation here on this particular board, along with the wiring diagram, and that's going to be important for the plug and also the solder pads. I'll show you that here in a second. And yeah, if you happen to be watching this in the future, this might be important. You can reference this. But all you get here in the box is you get the wiring loom here that plugs into this right here, and you get the board, of course. The XT60 is not pre-soldered. It is in a little bag here. You'll have to solder this on yourself, but the wire itself is soldered on, as well as the capacitor. Yeah, so this one is a 35 volt 680 microfarad capacitor. And this is 12 gauge wire, so yeah, 30 by 30 here. This is going to be for your much larger quads, 5-inch and above, 5, 6, 7, perhaps even larger. The gummies are already installed. There's some, looks like some conformal coating already on the board, so you can see that it's got that sort of sheen or the little shine on it. and also on this side as well, where all the MOSFETs are. Nice big pads here for your motor wires, so it should be pretty easy to build out. And the wiring order is also labeled on this connector as well. So oftentimes this is not going to exactly match whatever flight controller you're using, so something to be aware of. You'll probably need to modify it so that it matches whatever your flight controller is. Alright, so I got this Argus Pro stack. It's an F7 stack with a 55 amp ESC. This is from AxisFlying. I believe a 50 amp version, a lighter version of this appears in the Cola 7, the 7-inch folding drone. But this is, I think, the follow-up to the iStack that came out last year. And they have a light version of this without all the heat sinks as well. So yeah, there's this is another company that they kind of constantly are changing their stuff. So we're gonna quickly show you these, and then for specific specs, I would recommend going to the product page, and you can see all the wiring looms down there, because this is one of the things about these AxisFlying stacks is they are all plug oriented. So there's plugs for pretty much all the UARTs, and they're nicely labeled. This is obviously the F7 flight controller, and you've got it looks like up to 8 motor outputs on this particular flight controller, so it's nice. Again, all these little plugs, and so you have all these plugs available to you in the packaging. And obviously this is a 30 by 30 board. You do have some solder pads here for these here, and this looks like where you could solder up the wires for the ESC for motors output 1 through 4. And again, here's the ESC, and here's all the mounting hardware. You got your M3 screws, you have a capacitor there, XT60, and all the little plugs that you're going to need to get this going for the flight controller. And this is the plug for the 4-in-1 ESC here. So obviously you could probably get 2 of these to do a 8 motor setup. You have to buy buy another one of these separately. Yeah, nice motor pads here for your motor wires on both sides, top and bottom. And this is obviously 32 bits, 3 to 6S. Nice heatsink here, and this is for your power connector there. Also, nice solder pads on both sides. Now, supposedly this is splash proof, but it's not waterproof. Obviously, splash proof because a lot of the internal components are sort of hidden inside this heatsink here. Doesn't mean that you can dump this into water, because it's not waterproof, but it's just splash proof. Same with the flight controller, and of course, you know, these plugs here, if water gets in, then you're going to be electrically compromised, so be aware of that. We've got 3 new GPS modules here with compass from Foxeer. These are the new, I guess the M10 series, I guess the 10th generation of these GPS modules are all coming out now from everybody. So there's 3 sizes. There's this tiny one. This is the 120. There's a 250 here, and the middle size here is the 180. The 120 here has solder pads right there and bare wire. As you can see here, that's included. The 250 has a plug. And then, you know, you can see here it has the SDA SCL connectors for the onboard compass. And that's not something I don't really use, but I believe you can set this up with iNav. And they do include the plug, and all 3 of them have the compass built in, as well as the GPS. So I have the smaller one here, the 120, already installed on this Chimera 3 rebuild. And I have been flying around, just acquire satellites fairly quickly, and of course it's roughly 12 to 15 satellites once it locks onto everything after you've been flying around for a while. And you can see it's nice and light. Go to the product page for the weights for each of these. The 120 is definitely the smallest and the lightest, and so for some of these ultra light builds, this 120 is perfect. And I just have this stuck onto the O3 camera here with some VHP. It's been fine, hasn't vibrated off. I've been flying this one around quite a bit, and it works really well. So the flight controller that I put into this Chimera 3 rebuild was one of these T-Motor F7s. It's the 35 amp version. It's a 6S all-in-one flight controller and F7 flight controller. and I did not install the other one. This is the 45 amp, so it comes in two versions. This is the 45 amp, and you can see it's installed right there. Totally fine for a 3-inch. Obviously, if you go to like a bigger, like an ultralight, like a 5-inch ultralight, this 45 amp would be better. And they're basically identical. I didn't notice any differences between the two boards. Micro USB here for the connector. Does have a Betaflight OSD on here, and it does have their connector here for DJI. So that it runs basically it's passed through to VBAT, or battery voltage, so whatever is soldered on here in the batteries. And the MOSFETs here are rated to 45 amps for these and 35 amps for the other one. But yeah, this is essentially standard 25 by 25 flight controller, F7 MCU. It's got nice solder pads for all your little connectors for the UARTs, and then the motor wire pads are pretty decent as well. Didn't have any issues. You can see what I did there. It was a pretty simple wiring job, and not a lot of wires on there. I just have the GPS wire to the flight controller, and then the O3 air unit is plugged into the bottom plug. So pretty simple to build. Most of the all-in-one flight controllers are kind of like this now, and they have the plug now for your DJI O3 air unit or traditional air unit. Alright, so more stuff from Foxeer here. I got the all-in-one Reaper, and this one here I've had for a little while, and this is the version 3 45 amp F7, and it has the 8-bit BlueJay ESCs 2 to 6S. Version 4 is already out, so this is another company that kind of constantly are updating things very quickly. So I received this a while back, not that long ago, and it's already gone from version 3 to version 4. In fact, I have version 2 of these somewhere in a build. I forget which one. It wasn't that long ago either. That was maybe 3 months ago. So this one seems to get updated quite a bit, and I don't know exactly what the differences are between the different versions. So if you're asking, my answer is I don't exactly know. You'll have to contact Foxeer. But we have another sort of basic F7 flight controller, 20 by 20 or 25 by 25 whip style, micro USB connector, F7 MCU. It's got a Betaflight OSD. Got your plug here for your DJI, and I believe it's also VBAT pass through as well on this one. But looks pretty similar to the T-Motor one. And I believe this one has an MPU 6000 gyro, whereas the T-Motor ones, these have the MPU 6500 gyro. Alright, so they also sent me these new H7 flight controllers. They have the MPU 6000 gyros. They go up to 8S, and they have the dual BECs, as you can see. So there's two of them, because one is the mini version and one is the full-size version. So the mini is obviously 20 by 20, and then you have the 30 by 30 for their larger quads. So let's take a look at the smaller one first. Now we have a USB-C port on this one. Pretty nice. Nice solder pads for everything all around the edges here. No plugs other than the one plug here. This goes to your 4-in-1 ESC. You can see the motor outputs there. So there's going to be a wiring loom for that goes to your 4-in-1 ESC. But it's pretty standard looking here. And the two BECs there. One's going to be obviously 5 volts, and the other one's going to be, I think, 9 volts is what the other one is for DJI. Alright, here is the full-size 30 by 30 one. So yeah, the solder pads are, not super tiny. They're on the smaller side, but they do have through holes for those of you that like through holes. All of them have the through holes there. Sometimes that makes it easier for soldering. And this one again has the dual BEC. But this one has the separate plug for DJI. So you have your one plug for your motor outputs here to the 4-in-1 ESC, and then this one here is it's silk screen, but not that easy to read. But you can see, okay, it's 10 volts here on that BEC, and this is going to be for your DJI DJI O3 air unit. Okay, so we got another Flycolor 4-in-1 ESC. This is the Trinix G20. I believe this is another one that is possibly discontinued already. There's a G5 that I see on their site, but I couldn't find this on their site, and I haven't had this for that long either. and it's a 4-in-1 ESC, 60 amps, 3 to 6S, 32-bit ESCs, and it does come with documentation right here. And this is what the ESC looks like. I have seen a version of this with the heatsink on the Team Black Sheep site, but this one did not come with the heatsink, but it does come with looks like a lot of conformal coating. You can see that glossiness that's over everything here. So it's covering everything, of course, except for the pads for the motor wires. And this is a 20 by 20. I don't know if I said 30 by 30. It's a 20 by 20, 60 amp 4-in-1 ESC. So obviously, if you want to go a little bit smaller on your big builds with the 5-inch motors or 6-inch motors, yeah, this is one way to go. Got your connector there for your flight controller right there, and it does come with the wiring harness in the packaging, as well as looks like an XD60 there and your capacitor. And here's the back side. Again, lots of conformal coating. This is typical of Flycolor. They're not a huge manufacturer of parts, and they're not that easy to find. Like, I couldn't find them on AliExpress either. But yeah, this is again, this is one of these companies. They tend to come up with something, and they don't make them for very long before they come up with something new or replace it with something different. That's kind of common, as I said in the beginning of the video. Alright, so here is another new flight controller from HappyModel. This is called the Cross F4, and it is 1 to 2S, but the ESCs are only 5 amps max, not 12 amps. So you could put this in something like a Meteor 75 Pro frame. This is one of those that it's a little tricky to get these 4-in-1 ESCs to fit in there, but this one does happen to fit, if you're wondering. Express LRS receiver built in. It is a serial receiver. Got your plugs in here already for your motor wires, and it has a micro USB connector here on the bottom. Pretty traditional for HappyModel. Kind of wish that they did not pre-install the motor plugs, but it is what it is. That's how it comes. And then this has a standard small antenna here for your Express LRS receiver. No video transmitter on this one, but it does have a Betaflight OSD, so it's obviously going to work for analog as well. Alright, so we got a bunch of stuff here from SpeedyBee as well, and start off with these soldering practice boards. So it looks like it comes in a pack of 4, and so basically it's a PCB with much solder pads, and comes a variety of them, big ones, small ones, the ones with through holes, got the ones on the edge, ones in the middle, got a whole bunch of them here on the other side as well. So if you're new to FPV, new to soldering, I highly recommend picking one of these up and practice on before you wire up your flight controller. This will help out a lot in terms of building up your skill set. And I also got these 5-volt BECs, and they have a balance plug on one side, so it looks like 2 to 6S batteries. Outputs 5 volts on this little plug over here, and you get USB-C for one, and the other cable is this type here, which is, I think, is for their thumb camera, the Thumb 4K. But basically it puts 5 volts out there, and you can, go to splice it up to any other 5-volt source or a 5-volt input. They also sent along some of these shorter O3 camera cables. So one end goes to the O3 camera, and then this one goes to the air unit. And this one's 60 millimeters, and they have other sizes. I think there's a 300 millimeter one. So if you have a craft like a 7-inch where the camera's further away from the air unit, you want a longer one. They have longer ones. They have various different sizes, but I actually requested some shorter ones because this will be good for something like the Pavo Pico. It'll save some weight with a shorter cable, and so we'll see if that helps all that in terms of vibration as well. And this is their new Goggle BEC. So you plug in a 3 to 6S battery here, XD60 on this side, and then there's a USB-C output on this side over here. And they give 2 different cables that you can get. So you can get this is the Goggles 2 connector, And then this one here is the Goggles V2. And you can get either this cable or this other cable or both of them if you desire. And it outputs 9.2 volts on this end for those goggles. And you just plug in your battery on the other side over here. And you get a battery readout here. So a pretty simple device if you want to power up your goggles via a LiPo instead of the standard battery, then this is the way to go. And last but not least, we have a soldering iron from HGLRC, but if you look at the case here, this looks like they're OEMing from Secure. And this is the, I'm pretty sure, going to be pretty much what those guys sell. I'm not sure which model this is from, so you have a barrel connector XT60 for the power, and then here's your portable soldering iron, and it goes in like so. Yeah, they're calling this the RC2 USB-C for firmware updates, and their barrel connector for power. But you have a clear case here, so you can see everything on the inside. And some specs here: barrel connector is 5525, 12 volts to 25 volts, 3 to 6S. So portable soldering iron. I'm not sure exactly which model Secure this is replicating, but it looks like it's pretty much one of those, but marketed and sold by HGLRC. Alright, so a few different motors here. I may have showed these on my Instagram, I'm not sure. Here's a new T-motor, 1002 motor. This one's 18,000 kV, so designed for, or intended for 1S. The windings aren't the greatest I've seen. They're kind of thin. The magnets look pretty good. Bearings are fairly smooth. A little bit notchy from the magnets. It's a pretty strong magnet, but they appear to be curved. So, got your standard, I think these are M1.4 screws in a 3-hole pattern, and then it's a pretty small length of motor wire plus your plug here for your flight controller. Got these new 1003 motors from Sub 250, and these are 10,000 kV. So, and you got your standard 3-hole mount there. These magnets are a bit thinner than the ones that are on the T motor. Standard a 3-hole mount. Windings look about the same quality as the T motor ones, not as notchy. Bearings are nice and smooth, and you got your pretty standard motor wire length and the plug for your motor plug on your flight controller. And it looks like there's silicone here holding the motor wire on this motor. And the T motor, it just looks like it's some heat shrink. Alright, so these are the Beta FPV 1102 14,000 kV motors that you've seen before on the Pavo Pico. Pretty nice motors, good power, nice and smooth. And again, the windings are so-so. There's a pretty big gap there between the magnets and the stator compared to the other ones, but this is a slightly wider 11 size motor. Heat shrink covering the ends of the motor wire where it's, I think there's a PCB there where the motor wires are soldered to. And you got your standard motor plug here for your flight controller. So, yeah, it's a pretty good motor. I have no complaints in terms of power there. Alright, so these are the new flight controllers. Well, at least this one here is the one that's in the Pavo Pico. It's the new 1 to 2S with the 12 amp BB51 ESC, so they are Blu-ray compatible, but you need special firmware for that. But they have two versions of this one with the ARM or the STM. This is an F405 chip on here, and the new Artery Tech, they call this the AT32 chip. And if my camera will focus, it's a whole new architecture. It is based on the same sort of Cortex MCU that STM makes, but it's I guess it's a different company, Artery Tech, and they make these at a much lower cost. So the price difference, I believe this one is coming in at $40 when this one's like $50, but the price difference is going to be greater if you get the other ones from like Neutron RC. I believe they sell a all-in-one flight controller ESC for like $40 with 45 amp ESCs, whereas the similar STM32 version from that same company is about double the price, or I think it's around $79, $80. And this is new technology. It requires different firmware. It's called AT Betaflight. So you just can't just plug it into your current Betaflight configurator and have it work. You need a special version of the Betaflight configurator and special firmware specifically for this MCU. And currently these only run 4.3.2, and these won't be fully supported until version 4.5 comes out. So if you're looking for these to run on version 4.4, you'll have to do some work on your own to compile the firmware, and I don't really know anything about that. But basically, yeah, you can buy these today. You have to get your own version of the configurator and do some special flashing to be able to access and configure the firmware that's on here, which is version 4.3.2, and you'll have to wait a while before it's fully supported in Betaflight, which is going to be version 4.5, and I don't know when 4.5 will come out. So this is kind of a work in progress type of thing. It's cheaper, but there's limitations right now. There might not be later once it's fully supported, and it could be a good alternative in terms of cost. We'll have to see. There's not a whole lot of these out right now, but I just wanted to quickly show you that, yeah, they're making these, and it is available if you want to go the cheaper route, save a few bucks. But there's obviously, as I said, limitations because you're stuck on 4.3.2 currently as of June 2023. But whenever 4.5 comes out, these should be fully supported at that time, but who knows when that's going to be. All right, so that's going to cover for this video. If there's anything that you want me to cover in terms of a specific part in a future video, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and acquire it. But yeah, I just kind of I don't make individual videos on every single part I get anymore because there's just too many, and I don't get parts as often as I used to because I guess people are more into binding or buying binding flies now instead of building everything from scratch. So things, just keep that in mind. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.